When children move from kindergarten into primary school, the whole attention picture can change very quickly. In kinder, movement, play, and short activity, bursts often hide weaker focus skills. In primary school, those same children are suddenly asked to listen for longer, follow multi-step instructions, wait, remember, and keep going in a much more structured classroom. That's why difficulties often become more visible right at this transition. That doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. Often, it means the environment has started asking for a different level of cognitive control, and that shift reveals where a child may need support. In early years settings, children usually learn through movement, play, and quick resets. Primary school asks for something else: longer periods of sitting, more listening, more waiting, more written work, and more independent follow-through. For some children, the change is smooth. For others, it's the moment small attention gaps stop looking minor and start affecting learning every day. Some wobble is completely normal, especially in the first school terms. Many 6 to 8-year-olds fidget, drift after 10 or 15 minutes, or need a reminder before they settle again. What matters is recovery. Can your child re-engage with one prompt, or do they keep losing the thread even when the task is familiar and support is reasonable? A temporary adjustment usually improves as routines become familiar. A more persistent concern keeps showing up beyond the settling-in period, across lessons and across weeks. Typical restlessness usually looks active but connected. A child may wiggle, tap, glance away, then come back and still complete the work. More concerning attention gaps often look different. The child misses parts of the instruction, stalls halfway through, needs repeated prompts, or abandons tasks they seemed able to start. The issue is not simply being busy. It's focus breaking down often enough to disrupt learning. That doesn't always mean something is wrong. Quite often, it means the classroom is now demanding a different level of listening, memory, inhibition, and self-management than the child has needed before. So, before we jump to labels, it helps to understand exactly what primary school is asking the brain to do. From the outside, all of that can look like poor focus, but the underlying bottleneck can be very different. And that matters because the right support depends on understanding which part of the system is under the most pressure. From the outside, all of that can look like poor focus, but the underlying bottleneck can be very different, and that matters because the right support depends on understanding which part of the system is under the most pressure. One difficult maths lesson doesn't tell you much. What helps is looking for patterns. Does the problem show up in reading, writing, and maths? Is it worse late morning, after noisy activities, or during multi-step tasks? Does home look different from school? When you track the pattern across subjects, settings, and weeks, concern becomes clearer and more evidence-based. Attention problems are not always attention problems. A child with dyslexia may look distracted because reading takes so much effort. An anxious child may freeze, scan for mistakes, or avoid starting. Another child may be slowed by language load, processing speed, or simply being one of the youngest in the year group. That's why broad labels can mislead. Similar behaviors can grow from very different causes, and similar-looking children may need very different kinds of support. It helps to think of attention as several systems working together. One part is alerting, getting the brain ready to engage. Another is orienting, directing attention to the right thing, and shifting away from distractions. Then there is sustaining attention, staying with the task after the novelty wears off. And there is monitoring, noticing mistakes, and recognizing when focus has slipped. A child may be strong in one area and weak in another, which is why try harder is rarely enough. Working memory is one of the biggest hidden bottlenecks in the classroom. It's the mind's short holding space, the system that lets a child keep information active while they use it. If a teacher gives several steps in a row, the first one can push out the second, or the second can wipe out the third. From the outside, it can look like the child wasn't listening. In reality, the instruction simply didn't stay available long enough to act on. The same thing happens in maths, reading, and writing. A child may know what to do, but lose the steps halfway through the task. Some children are also spending huge amounts of energy filtering noise, movement, touch, and visual clutter. In a busy classroom, scraping chairs, crowded walls, shifting bodies, and background noise can keep pulling on the nervous system. By mid-morning, The child may look inattentive when they are actually mentally tired from managing too much sensory input for too long. If sensory fatigue is part of the picture, support needs to reduce overwhelm, not just demand more effort. Another bottleneck is self-monitoring. Some children do not notice, in the moment, that they have skipped a question, drifted off task, rushed the middle, or failed to check their work. From the outside, that can look careless or unmotivated. But inside the task, it often feels more like poor pacing and weak internal feedback. When that system is weak, support works best when it builds awareness and pacing, not just correction after the fact. Support often begins before the school day even starts. Calmer mornings protect cognitive energy. Predictable routines reduce decision load. Clothes ready, bag packed, breakfast expected, and a known sequence can all preserve the mental resources a child will need later. Screen-free bedtimes matter too, because sleep and nervous system recovery shape attention far more than most parents realize. At home, shorter homework blocks usually work better than long battles for concentration. Think in brief bursts, then reset. Visual timers can help because they give the task clear edges. Movement breaks matter too. A quick stretch, carrying something, or walking for a drink can help the brain reset without turning into avoidance. Keep the workspace uncluttered and keep expectations age-appropriate. Young children are still building these skills. Good support is less about pressure and more about structure, rhythm, and recovery. When a child loses the thread, the goal is not to shame them back into focus, it's to help them re-enter. Visual checklists reduce memory load and show what finished looks like. A simple reset routine, maybe a sip of water, one deep breath, then checking the first step again, can make re-entry feel manageable. And a steady adult voice often works better than repeated correction, because children borrow calm before they can reliably generate it on their own. Some of the best focus practice looks like play, not therapy. Pattern clapping builds auditory attention and sequencing. Pencil tracking supports visual attention, Simon says, strengthens inhibition and listening control. And short memory games help children hold one more piece of information in mind before acting on it. These activities help most when they're brief, enjoyable, and repeated regularly without pressure. You're not testing your child, you're gently strengthening the systems underneath classroom focus. Digital tools can sometimes support focus, especially when they add structure, feedback, or motivation. For some children, a well-designed app makes practice feel clearer and more rewarding than a blank worksheet. But moderation matters. Screens should support learning, not crowd out sleep, movement, outdoor play, or real human interaction. The aim is intentional use, where the tool serves the child, not the other way around. Early support matters because small gaps can widen quietly as school demands grow. If a child regularly misses parts of instruction, reading, writing, and confidence can all take a knock over time. That doesn't mean poor outcomes are inevitable. It means earlier clarity gives a child a better chance to progress with less strain. Emotional safety matters too. Stress, family strain, or ongoing worry can pull mental energy away from learning. So when we look at focus, we need the full picture, not just the surface behavior. If your child's focus struggles keep showing up across time and settings, you don't have to settle for guesswork. Careful assessment can show whether attention, memory, language, processing speed, sensory load, or emotional stress is doing the heaviest lifting. That kind of clarity makes support more targeted, more compassionate, and much more effective. At the Cognitive Development Learning Center, we help families move from uncertainty to understanding with careful, child-centered assessment. If you'd like clearer insight into your child's attention and learning profile, we're here to help. Pinpoint, map, guide. Patterns are far more useful than snapshots. Try noticing what happens across reading, writing, maths, and less structured classroom tasks. It also helps to watch for timing. Is your child sharper at first thing, then fading late morning, or struggling most after noisy transitions? Look across weeks as well. A pattern that repeats over several weeks carries much more weight than one bad day. Teacher input matters, but one report is only one angle. The goal is to combine school observations with what you see at home. When you collect examples across subjects, times of day, and settings, the picture becomes clearer and much easier to act on. That kind of tracking helps you move from worry to useful evidence. Attention problems are not always attention problems. Several other factors can produce the same classroom picture from the outside. A child with dyslexia may seem distracted when the real issue is the effort required to decode words quickly enough to keep up. An anxious child may scan for mistakes, worry about getting things wrong, or freeze when tasks feel uncertain. That can look like not paying attention. Some learning differences affect processing speed, language load, or memory. The child may want to focus, but the task overwhelms their system. Relative age matters too. A child who's among the youngest in the year group may simply have less developmental maturity at that point in time. That's why broad labels can mislead. Similar behaviors can come from very different underlying causes. The better question is not what's wrong with this child. It's what is making focus harder in this child right now. Once you see the possible lookalikes, support becomes more targeted and much more compassionate. It helps to think of attention as an interlocking system, not a single switch that's either on or off.